The game went to overtime between Michigan and Alabama, and top-seeded Michigan able to advance to their first college football playoff championship game. It'll be in Houston with a 27-20 victory over the 4th-seed Alabama. The game played at the Rose Bowl there on Monday evening into the night. As Jim Harbaugh's team, 14-0, they will play for the first national title opportunity for that school since 1997, a generation ago. They will play Washington, the Huskies, who won the late game, getting a defensive stand themselves. And so coming up on Monday here, January 8th, the winner between Washington and Michigan, a couple of Big Ten teams now. Remember Washington going to the Big Ten, and that will be the matchup in the championship game. One of them will be undefeated and the champion of the world. But Michigan able to get it done. They had a fourth-quarter comeback. Their offense didn't do anything in the third quarter or most of the fourth quarter, and then just a mind-boggling finish. The two winningest programs in college football. They didn't mention that on the broadcast at all. And they play the second overtime game in the 110th edition of the Granddaddy of them all. And Alabama, they had a shot. They had a chance to tie the game, needed a touchdown, as Michigan had possession, scored on their first possession of overtime. And their quarterback for Bama, Jalen Milroe, caught a bad snap and ran right in to a wall. Now, I'm told you're only allowed to have 11 players on the field. If you saw the end of this game, it looked like Michigan had about 20 guys out there to stop Milroe, as he had nowhere to go. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. The tide turned away. So let us discuss the question. Can you explain in a few words how Michigan was able to pull a game out where they looked like in the second half they didn't do anything for most of the second half and they still win the game? So I've got firewood, bedrock, and measuring tape. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to make balloons, which is what will be in the rafters at the stadium there in Houston. And the balloons and the confetti will fly down should Michigan win. But even if they lose, they're going to be flying down. So we'll start with this. The beginning of this game was Keystone Cops-like. It was a bootleg copy of Super Duper Football Follies that Chip in the Q's watches on VHS, our buddy Chip in the Q's. It started with J.J. McCarthy, what appeared to be an interception on his first pass, but it was taken back after replay. Then Alabama, they couldn't snap the ball correctly. It looked like the expansion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The snap's going low, it's going high, it's in the air everywhere. Michigan had dominated the stat sheet in the first half. They were the better team in the first half, but they were unable to get any kind of separation. So Alabama was right there. And then the Wolverines offense stuck in the muck, in the muddy waters there in the second half, and then they get that dramatic drive late in the game, about 4 minutes to go in the game, something like that, and they had a fourth down conversion, a big cojones fourth down conversion on a pass play, and then eventually the touchdown to tie the game, and we had the fireworks in overtime. So when historians go back and they write about this particular game, it'll be, oh, man, this was the epitome of a slobber knocker. But in the moment, this game was lacking for long stretches. Now, what it was not lacking was commercials. I happen to love commercials. I am in a commercial industry. But there are a limit. There are a limit to the number of commercials you can handle. My God. In the end, Michigan wins because of the P word, perseverance, a.k.a. defense. Michigan kept chopping the firewood, and eventually they lit the fire, and Alabama was on fire at the end of that game in overtime. Now, page 2 here. What happened to the Nick Saban offense? Well, it was a malfunction. Even though they had a shot to win the game, they sucked at a time you cannot suck on that possession in overtime. And unlike Nick Saban teams, you'll see them have a stinker, a clunker early in the year. And this year they had a couple of clunkers early in the year, Alabama. They were able to pull out a couple of those. But Nick Saban teams, by the end of the year, they're able to do the fundamentals. They failed at the bedrock of football, the basic, blocking and tackling, struggling to snap the ball. Alabama, 288 total offensive yards. That is a season low, and it's a season low by almost 20 yards. That's how dominant Michigan's defense was and how in shambles the Crimson Tide offense was. And even with the troubles, even with the issues here, they still had a shot, Alabama, to win the game in regulation and to tie it in overtime. Defense makes a stop in regulation, they'll win the game. In overtime, offense makes a play, they'll play on to a second overtime. Meanwhile, I don't know if you're like me, but probably not. The quarterback for Alabama, Jalen Milroe, one of the big storylines over the weekend. And I was not here. I had a couple of well-earned days away from the watchtower here, although we did do the TV show over the weekend. But the quarterback, Jalen Milroe, he had said in the lead-up to the Rose Bowl, it was a big talking point, big headlines all over social media, that he got the last laugh over the Patriots offensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien. O'Brien had been at Alabama. O'Brien apparently wanted Milroe to switch positions with the Crimson Tide. And so Milroe did a victory lap. He took a bow prior to the Rose Bowl. He certainly talked the talk. In the game, here's the problem. He didn't walk the walk. And I don't think I'm being a douche pointing that out, right? That was not a good game by the Alabama quarterback. Bill O'Brien actually ended up looking pretty good because of the way Milroe played against Michigan. He was averaging 5 yards per pass attempt. You'd say he was more effective running the ball. He averaged 3 yards per carry. He had a couple of big runs. He did run the ball well at times. But a passer rating of 81, and the quarterback's main job is to matriculate the ball down the field, throwing the ball. He was a flop in that department. So he took a bow. He did a little pirouette on the catwalk there. Milroe talked about how great he was, and he proved Bill O'Brien wrong. But in the biggest game of his life, he went out there and rode the vomit comet for Alabama. And there's no other way to say it. They still had a chance to win the game. As bad as he was, they still had a shot. They had a decent quarterback play. They win the game. Ifs and buts were candy nuts. All right, last word. The big storyline for Michigan, the rumors of Jim Harbaugh leaving for the NFL. Seems like a fait accompli here that he's gone. And he's going to have to obviously wait to the championship game on Monday. And then Harbaugh will exit stage left. The Michigan athletic director, Ward Manuel, I believe that's his name. His name's Ward. I know that. Anyway, he was asked about Harbaugh's contract extension. He said, quote, "I'm working on it," is what he said. Now, when Harbaugh was asked point blank about the Michigan job and the future of staying there, going to the NFL after the Rose Bowl, he said, "Happy flight back to Ann Arbor," is what Harbaugh said. So that's a non-answer answer. So I asked the question to the assembled electorate. The question is this: does this win by the Maize and Blue increase or decrease Jim Harbaugh leaving the Wolverines? Does this victory over Alabama increase or decrease Jim Harbaugh leaving for the Wolverines? So I have this as a zero-sum game. It makes for a better Hollywood story if Michigan wins and then Jim Harbaugh runs off into the sunset. But it doesn't matter, right? If you look at the measuring tape, Jim Harbaugh continues to inch towards the NFL. It's been this way for a couple of years, and I don't see any reason to think that it's going to be different. He talked to the Vikings. He thought he was going to get the Viking job a couple of years ago. How do I know that? Because he went to Minnesota on a flight on National Signing Day. That tells me that Harbaugh thought he was going to get the Viking job, didn't get it. Last year, he was all hot and horny for the Bronco job, didn't work out. Now he's hired this NFL-heavy agent amid buzz that the Chargers are interested, along with others. Chicago Bears have been mentioned if they do indeed make a coaching change. And with the NCAA breathing down his neck, there's like a fire-breathing dragon, whoo, just like that. The national title would be wonderful. It would be an extra piece of cake with lots of nice icing on it, and not the crappy kind of icing, the fondant, the good kind of icing. But Michigan, much like we talked about Washington and what's going to happen to Washington in their game and what happens when they're done, and there's going to be just a mass exodus of guys either to the NFL or to get a real job. Michigan's going to also have their own exit, stage right, stage left, wherever. Trap door opens up for the NFL draft. And you say, well, they'll just reload, and that's probably true. But Harbaugh, he doesn't have to worry about the NCAA if he's coaching the Raiders or the Chargers or the Bears. And he can exit before Big Ten expansion, which makes it more difficult on everybody. So the idea that Harbaugh is more likely to stay if Michigan ends up losing, I don't buy that. Or winning, I don't think it's. I think the decision's already been made, is what I'm trying to say. He's already made his mind up. He wants to go to the NFL, and it's just a matter of which city he goes to and which team he goes to coach.